Good day, folks, and welcome to the Anorak Review Show with your host, the Anorak. AC bloody DC, man. What can honestly be said about them? They're one of the greatest hard-rocking, metal-spewing bands of all time out there ever. The name represents high energy and powerhouse excitement, of which they perfectly embody. What makes AC/DC so appealing and memorable for so long is the bluntness and simplicity in their music. It's hard, heavy rock and roll in its purest and wildest form, while maintaining a good sense of fun and humour. For nearly 50 years, since 1974, they kept on evolving their sound and lineups without having to change in any radical fashion or manner. Even with the passing of the great Bon Scott in 1980 and Malcolm Young in 2017, each and every member of AC/DC, current or former, are all equally important, and those two are absolutely no exception. So I wish to salute them in particular. I hope they're still up there in heaven, still rocking out some good old sweet tunes. Which, I suppose, is considerably fitting, considering the album I'm looking at today. After the smashing success of 1980's Back in Black, which became the current second best-selling album of all time, behind Michael Jackson's Thriller, the band quickly sought to make their next album, and one that would hopefully be just as big as the previous, and they did not fail in that regard. And it would be released on 20th of November 1981, 40 years ago. And that album is called For Those About to Rock, We Salute You. The cover itself, like any great cover, is pure, simple, and iconic. It's basically, to sum it up, to really consider this, the previous album at that point, Back in Black, was just essentially the iconic AC/DC logo and the title of Back in Black in a sort of grey text in front of nothing but a very simple black background and nothing else. That album cover was to represent mourning for the passing of Bon Scott, their loss and all. So how they top an all-black album? Having a gold cover with a picture of a cannon, an old-fashioned vintage cannon on it, and still have the big logo and the title, that's how you top it off. That's how much awesome it is. And it's also clever too how they have the first half of the title in the front, while having the other half on the back, which I think is pretty clever to say the least. And the inspiration behind the cannon itself is worth of note. In the summer of 81, while the band were recording their music, something else happened to be going on around the same time: the wedding between Princess Diana and Prince Charles. Yes, that Diana and that Charles. And that wedding happened to be playing it on TV, and some of the band members took note of it, particularly a part where they fired cannons to celebrate the marriage. And they apparently thought, hey, that sounds pretty good. We should put that in one of our songs. And in one of the songs, they would put cannon sounds in. So that's something else we can thank Princess Diana for, inspiring AC/DC. So how much more awesome can that be? But is the music itself still just as good as built up? Well, let's take a listen to the entire album of For Those About to Rock, We Salute You, and find out for ourselves. We begin the album with its title track, a simple rock and roll anthem of simple yet epic proportions. The name itself was inspired by a writer named Robert Graves, who apparently quoted an old saying about prisoners sentenced to death in the Roman Colosseum. The phrase itself translated to, "Hail Caesar, those who are about to die salute you." And just like with the album and song Let There Be Rock much earlier, AC/DC took that phrase and put their own little twist onto it, with lyrics such as, "We roll tonight to the guitar bite," "Hail to the good times because rock has got the right of way," and "We ain't no legend because we're just living for today." The song's essentially a celebration and glorification of rock music, and I do mean that in a most positive way, and it's, well, a salute to many of the rock musicians and fans aspiring to be rock musicians of the time. And with that, it's honestly it. There's nothing too deep or complex about it. And that's fine. It doesn't always need to be so. It doesn't have to be interpreted in multiple ways. Sometimes it's just meant to be fun. It's meant to be exciting. It's meant to just give you some positive energy to go through the day. It's just music about celebrating music. And that's it. Another thing to note is the use of actual cannon sounds in the song itself partway through, when the singer himself, Brian Johnson, shouts the command of "Fire!" I already mentioned the inspiration behind it, but I also wish to express how it adds a sense of musical patriotism to the song as a whole. It's like the modern age equivalent of 1812 Overture, which also utilized the sounds of cannons blasting as part of its musical symphony. This is a song I can definitely salute to any day. Next is Put the Finger on You, or I Put the Finger on You. It's kind of confusing. Sometimes it varies between them. Anyways, this song continues this energy with the familiar guitar riffs of brothers Malcolm and Angus Young, as well as the drums and percussion of Phil Rudd. The lyrics here are also very simple, being about Brian Johnson picking a very nice woman, hanging out with her, and, well, getting it on and down with her. Putting the finger on someone could mean identifying a particular individual person, whether they did something right or wrong or wherever. In this case and context, this lucky subject of a woman had stolen old Brian's heart. Or that he's telling her to pull his finger, hence why he might literally put it on her. Something to think about. Or if you remember how one person would nag another and they'd go, "Does this annoy you? I'm not touching you." Here though, Brian is in a way touching her and therefore not annoying her. Sometimes getting poked by someone may annoy you or kind of get you irritated, but if they keep their finger on you, it may not exactly bother you anymore. It's possible. Regardless though, like any song by AC/DC, this song doesn't annoy me one bit. With its catchy beat and hook, I would put my finger on the replay button for this song if I wanted to. After that is Let's Get It Up. Not to be confused with Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye, but since they both involve innuendos, I will be quick to blame you on that. A slightly slower, blues-heavy track of sorts. This is about a bunch of sailors and pirates on a pleasure trip, riding the high tides and cruising the seven seas. Never going down, but getting up. After all, you're going to need to be a strong enough strapping fellow to hoist the sails and keep up speed. Yeah, okay, it's about getting a boner. Very clever, dirty maybe, but still very clever. It's a good example of their sneaky, filthy, and yet unapologetic humour, as well as a usage of innuendos and sexual innuendos and double entendres. The members of AC/DC must have some pretty good seamen. I mean, they must be pretty good seamen. As in sailors. Anyways, ignoring that. This song also has a pretty sweet guitar solo by Angus Young himself that really does show their bluesy roots. All in all, this song's like if the aforementioned Marvin Gaye Let's Get It On song and In the Navy by Village People both had a secret love child together, then said love child spent most of its time rocking to some good old Led Zeppelin songs playing in the jukebox. If this song don't make you want to bang your head up, I don't know what would. However, the next track, Inject the Venom, might as well. Judging by the title alone, one may think this is about taking drugs, like a syringe or something, or maybe executing someone via lethal injection. But actually listening to and reading the lyrics and the context they provide, the latter may be most likely in such a case. Sort of. Accompanied by a pretty mean rhythm of drums and guitars, the song seems to be about retaliation, retribution, and just all-around revenge in general. The most worthless of causes. But if you're listening to an AC/DC song, then of course it's absolutely 100% worth it. Anyways, on top of this revenge, it seems to be about someone who seeks out those who did you wrong and offering such people all punishment and no mercy. Although when Brian sings no mercy for the bad if they plead and no mercy for the bad if they need it, it almost sounds like he's saying no mercy for the bad if they pee and no mercy for the bad if they bleed it. Then again, such bad people would most likely wet themselves if they ever saw a guy like Brian Johnson coming their way with a vengeful face. And they'd no doubt bleed for whatever he may do to them. We also have another chunky guitar solo from Angus, serving as the middle 8 in the song's structure, which is bloodily and wickedly done well as always. This is one deliciously venomous song, so much so that I think I've already developed an immunity to it. Side A ends with Snowballed, and just as before, one might think this is about crack or cocaine, just from interpreting the title alone, when it's more likely about getting ripped off so badly by other people or being wrongly accused of something you may or may not have done to begin with, or living in excessiveness like drinking and churning in all the money and whatnot, and leaving yourself open to the potential consequences of it, whether you're ignorant of them or not, such as loan sharks and wars that you might stir up and may come your way, being crashed out of the market, bombed out of the city, pulled out of the picture with an axe about to fall. Which you should be careful with, Eugene, just saying. This is also probably one of the more heavier songs, even by AC/DC standards. It's kind of hard to describe in simple words, but it does remind me a bit of something out of Saxon or Iron Maiden, which is fitting, if not possibly a bit ironic, since this was during the midst of the new wave of British heavy metal at the time. So maybe AC/DC took a bit of influence from some of the bands and songs from that movement. Also, the way Brian shouts the title of Snowballed in the chorus, it also does remind me of a scene from School of Rock where Jack Black sings Step Off in one bit of the film, with a very similar heavy falsetto-like manner. Speaking of which, the title itself might represent how a snowball would be thrown at you, likely in the face, and as I mentioned, either brushing off or even deliberately ignoring any consequences will end up having them hitting you right on the head, which I think is probably what the band were kind of going for in terms of the lyrical content.